Joining us from Millbank now, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Ms. Cooper, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Are you in entire agreement with the coalition government on today's debate? The outcome, certainly, but there must be details that you're not entirely happy with about it.
Well, we certainly welcome David Cameron's change of heart on the BSkyB issue. I think that the public would have just been really, concerned and angry if the government had effectively endorsed the go-ahead for BSkyB, for the takeover by News Corporation of BSkyB. They're expanding into a section of the media market at a time when there are still these very serious allegations about, hacking into victims' phones, deep distress that's been caused. So I think that's welcome that they have changed position on that. But we still wait to see the details of the public inquiry. We want the remit for the public inquiry to be wide, to make sure that it includes not just what's been happening in the press, but also the relationship between the press and the police, and the relationship between the press and politics as well. So we're still waiting to see that. And The third area, of course, is that we still haven't got answers from David Cameron about his employment of Andy Coulson.
OK. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But what difference does it really make if the House of Commons makes this call to Rupert Murdoch to call off his bid for BSkyB? I mean, he doesn't have to pay any attention to you at all, does he really?
Well, I think it's a very strong statement of the will of Parliament elected by people across the country. And the reason that we're doing it is because actually this is what people across the country are saying to us. I think people are deeply distressed about what's happened. And I do think that Rupert Murdoch and News Corporation need to take serious heed of what Parliament is saying.
If the inquiry looks at the relationship, one of the inquiries looks at the relationship between not only the way the press work, but also the relationship between politicians and the parties and the press, that might shed an uncomfortable focus on what the last Labour government was involved in with, say, the Murdoch organisation, won't it?
Well, I think that we should be open to scrutiny about what's been happening, about what should happen going forward. I mean, obviously, I think we've all been shocked by these latest allegations, and I think nobody was aware of the sheer depth of what was happening with the idea that somebody could be hacking into the phone of 13-year-old Millie Dowler when she was missing is just horrifying. We didn't have those sorts of allegations before, but of course, I do think it is right that we should, properly scrutinise the whole relationship going back in time as well as going forward. And so I do think, of course, politicians will need to answer questions just as the press will need to answer questions. But I do think it's, that must include, I think the Prime Minister also has to answer some questions about Andy Coulson, because I think until he can do that, he can't really credibly be searching for the truth and be really properly opening up scrutiny.
Well, hasn't he already answered those questions? What else do you want to know?
I think what he hasn't answered is what happened about the warnings that we know his office were given at the time when he won the election, at the time when he was going into Downing Street. He was given some very serious warnings about the connections between Andy Coulson and people who were alleged to be involved in criminal activity and phone hacking. What did he do with those warnings? Was Andy Coulson properly vetted? Did David Cameron know? Because I think it does show a serious misjudgment of the Prime Minister to appoint somebody like that to such a senior government job. And I think it would be helpful in this process of getting to the bottom of what's happened if he could be open about that and answer those questions as well, which so far he hasn't done.
Yvette Cooper, thanks very much for joining us this morning.